This is Skip Perham from the marketing program at Suffolk University in Boston. Welcome to another edition of the Sawyer Business School Amplification Avenue podcast, where we talk about the amplifying properties of sports, as well as the convergence of sports business, the media, and society. I am incredibly honored to talk to today's guest, former New England Patriots left tackle, Matt Light, not because I am a Patriots fan, but I am. And I grew up rooting for the Patriots back when the Patriots, as I say to my students, they weren't one of the worst teams in all of football. They were one of the worst franchises in all of sports. And Bob Kraft, Bill Belichick, Tom Brady, and guys like Matt Light really changed the entire history of that organization. So I give you a lot of credit for that, Matt. But no surprise on this podcast, we're going to talk very little, if any, football. I might squeeze a question at the end. In this interview, we're going to talk with Matt about his post-work career with kids, the power of his platform as a professional athlete or a former professional athlete and a professional athlete, his life as a sportsman, and what he teaches others about responsible gun ownership. Matt, welcome to the Amplification Avenue podcast.
Hey, Skip, thank you. It's good to be on and to be heard, I guess. And listen, you don't have to be a sports fan to talk to me. I welcome opportunities to talk about things outside of the sports realm, even though it's still fun to talk sports every now and then.
Oh, it's always good to talk about sports, but as someone who worked in the industry for close to 20 years, the business side always fascinated me. And I do believe strongly, that's why I call it the Amplification Avenue podcast, that sports has amplifying properties. You as an athlete have an amazing platform that others didn't have before you. And regardless of where you come from, what your issues are, you can use it. And we should respect that. Not everybody's going to agree on every issue, for sure. But I want to talk to you about the things that you that are important to you, because I know you're a lifelong sportsman. You're a hunter. I'm assuming that you are a gun owner. And just for perspective, I have not owned a gun. I actually have a firearms identification card that I've filled out and tried to bring to my local police station at least once, but the licensing officer wasn't there. So it is something that I've considered, but so just so that we have some perspective, but that's sort of what I want to talk to you about, Matt, about your lifelong passion for, sportsmanship. But in any case, tell us what you're doing post-career. Tell us about the Light Foundation, its mission, and what you and your wife, Susie, and your team does.
Well, and you hit it on the head, team. It's fun to have a sports background, and I agree that sports can amplify many things in your life. They can amplify the good things. They can also amplify the things that maybe you're not as proud of. There's a lot of eyes, right? And when you're in the public, view, you have to acknowledge the fact that, good and bad will be brought to light and amplified to follow this podcast. But it's a good thing for many, many people. And I can tell you that I've benefited greatly as an individual from a business perspective and for sure our nonprofit, right? Look, when I talk about the Light Foundation, there's not a moment that I forget when it comes to, the things that we do, who we do them with, the kids that we serve, the people that I've been able to meet. I mean, it's the coolest network on earth, not taking anything away from former teammates of mine, but it's beyond rewarding. And it's been an honor to be a part of the things that we do. And our focus is pretty straightforward. It's simple, yet it's very nuanced and can be complicated at times. And that's just, we want to work alongside young people, right? And we do it through the Light Foundation's Leadership Academy. And while that's a generic way to describe the work we do, it's also very broad-based in the sense that every day we have an opportunity as individuals to wake up and try to move the needle in the right direction, i.e., we have an opportunity to lead every single day. And so when you're working with young people and the focus is on leadership, it allows you to get into many different areas. And so for the Light Foundation, look, we're over 20 years working with kids through a variety of different programs that we've created from scratch or that we partner with other organizations on. And the idea is just walk alongside young people and introduce them to people who do things the right way and show them, the different tricks, so to speak, the different ways that you can attack life in a very productive, efficient way, i.e., again, lead. And so, it's a passion of mine. I was fortunate to grow up in a household where my parents, instilled a lot of core values in me, whether it's my faith, whether it's how I kind of look at life, learn how to be grateful, learn how to be appreciative. Those are the kind of things that we work with young kids on. And it's kids that range from, really honestly, kindergarten all the way through graduating seniors in a bunch of different disciplines. And, seemingly on paper, you could say, well, what does a youth turkey hunt have to do with leadership? Well, the way we do it, everything has to do with the decisions that they make, how they conduct themselves, the story that tells, and how we want to influence, those decisions within their realm.
So let's dig a little deeper into that. And I do want to ask you about a couple events in a second. And just so I don't forget, if you want to learn more about what Matt does, mattlight72.com, I believe is the URL. So that's mattlight, the number 72.com. Hope they have that right. And I'll try to get that in again at the end. So let's look a little bit deeper. You mentioned the turkey shoot, but I want to ask it in the context of this, because I've looked this up on your website. Can you talk about the real pledge, which calls for responsible, ethical, accountable leadership, and how does that flow into the event that you just talked about, the turkey shoot?
Yeah, I'm glad you asked about that. That pledge is important for us. When we started out, like any organization, you learn a lot about what you're doing, how you do it, the people you do it with, the type of impact that you want to make. You get feedback from the kids. It's no different than playing a sport of football, right? We evaluate everything. We film everything. Nothing's left to chance. We try to improve on everything. Even if it was good, it's not good enough. We want to make it great. And what we learned in working with kids and the programs and how we serve kids is that, you can say things over and over, like, hey, this is an opportunity for you, but here's the expectations. And you can list them out and you can have conversation about them. But this pledge is symbolic. It's ceremonious, right? We take the time to sit down and say it again, and then have the kids in our programs read aloud, what this pledge represents, and then sign it and date it with a witness, because it needs to carry weight. It needs to be a ceremony so that hopefully when it may seem like a better decision to just not answer that phone or not tap in, as we like to say, or maybe even think about doing something else when you committed to a program that we run, we hope that they lean on that pledge and say, you know what? I did make that commitment, and I do remember that moment, and I don't want to let them down, or I don't want to walk away from something that I've been given just because something else comes up, right? And well, look, when you're young, when I was a kid, I don't know that I put a whole lot of weight on, really standing behind what I said, right? Like, do my actions speak so loudly that they can't hear what I'm saying, is what a coach used to always tell me.
Yeah.
And it resonates today more than ever, especially when you're working with young people, because, you have the efforts of so many when you're fundraising or doing things, and people entrust you with their resources, whether it's what they've given in gifts or in kind or real dollars, right? They want to know that that's being used wisely. And when we have young people who don't take advantage of what they've been given, it's not just a loss for them, it's a loss for some other kid that could have taken that opportunity. So again, that's the reason behind the pledge, is to just really make it a point that, hey, you know what, when you say you're going to do something, it's really important that you do it.
Yeah. Yeah. So let's talk about the turkey shoot and the lessons that you teach in the context of that event. Can you walk us through that?
Sure. Look, first off, I like to say that, if you're given something, you may have a great time. You may remember some of it, but when you have to work for something, it always serves a much bigger purpose, right? And so we don't give kids anything other than an opportunity, right? We ask them to put some skin in the game, a little sweat equity, a little bit of time and energy. So in what we do through the Light Foundation, young people, for the most part, have to put in effort. So there's an essay that we have them write. We judge those essays. We then pick the top 16 in Ohio or the top 10 here in Rhode Island. And we give those kids an opportunity to participate in our youth turkey hunt. And then that topic could be like, what does what does conservation mean to you, right? It could be in the topic of the outdoors, right? And a little bit more tangible to things like hunting, right? Or we could have a topic that says, who are the real leaders in your life? Who are the people that you look up to, right? And then sometimes we hit topics that are a little bit more sensitive, right? Like, hey, have you ever been impacted by bullying, and how do you deal with that, or how do you help others deal with it if you have encountered it before? And we get their thoughts on that. So, and then when they come into camp, it's not just about shooting a turkey. They come in, first of all, they have to prove that they're proficient, and that they have to have their license. That takes a lot of time, a lot of commitment from young people to get a license, right? And to go through all those steps. And then they have to show us that, hey, they're safe. They're a responsible person with a firearm. And so now they're earning that trust to be able to go out and enjoy the great sport. And then while they're in camp, yes, we are turkey hunting. And the laws state that during the youth hunt, you can hunt all day, but we don't. We get them up early, which is tough for some of these kids because they typically stay up late, talking and getting to know each other. They come from, different backgrounds. They don't all know each other. In a lot of cases, they don't know more than one or two of the kids. And we stop it at noon so that we can then come back and do a number of team building exercises and have mentors share with them some of the things that, they learned, right? So, that's all part of this leadership mentality and imparting, some of the wisdom that, people that they may have never had an opportunity to meet, influence them in a positive way, and that they get to see it in real time.
That's cool. Well, let's build on that, the topic of leadership, and talk about an event that you have coming up on September 12th, I believe it is, right? The corporate leadership or corporate training event. Tell me about that. And it benefits the Honored American Veterans Field organization as well as the foundation. Is that correct?
That's right. Yeah. We started the preparation for the corporate training day back in 2019. We had the hopes of running it in 2020, but as we all know, things didn't go according to plan at that point in time. But look, it was born out of the idea that, first of all, we have the celebrity shootout the following day on the 13th of September.
Yep.
And this will be the 18th year for that event. And as we were thinking about the corporate training day back in 2019, the real mindset behind that event was, hey, we can't add anything more to the shootout, but we have all these resources here. How can we add something else that's unique and different and fun and engaging? And that's where it came from. But the overarching or the big push to do the corporate training day came from my experience being around our special operations community. And there is a link between the military and football in general, but definitely the NFL. And it's not that, hey, we go to war just like they go to war, because that's absurd. Those guys and those women, those men, those individuals who have sacrificed for their country, put it all on the line, are doing real things. We're playing a sport. But that said, the training is not that far off, and the mindset is similar in many ways. So there's always been a mutual respect. But since I retired, I've been able to do a lot more, with folks from our military community, right? And through that, I said, my goodness, these men operate in the most, ridiculous situations, right? I mean, to put it nicely, I mean, they're in they're in situations that they cannot make a mistake, because that means the guy next to them or they themselves don't go home. And so when it comes to critical thinking, and when it comes to decision making, and when it comes to leadership, and all the things that make great CEOs, great managers, great business owners, great human beings, right? These guys have an abundance, and they, in many cases, have done it for a long time. And then you see what they do when they transition into, quotes, the real world, and you're even more impressed. So they've got all this knowledge to share, and they really love sharing their knowledge of what they did, right? Whether it was their time in service or what they do, with their own businesses. And I thought, man, let's put this all together where we can invite a whole bunch of, executives and CEOs and people of that nature, right? To learn from the best of the best. These are your SEALs and your Green Berets and your Army Rangers and your Delta Force members. I mean, these are the guys that protect this country, the most ultimate warriors. And these, these participants in this event get to rub elbows and learn from and take part in that event. And at the end of the day, after we shoot a myriad of different ranges and disciplines and have a lot of fun, from full auto to handguns and long range, we sit down to a great dinner, and we do a fireside chat where they get to hear some of the stories of these warriors and these soldiers, and we kind of relate it to the business realm. And I think everybody walks away feeling really good about not only the impact that they're making supporting that event, but the fact that we've got such incredible people serving our country.
So this is the first time you're going to do this. You originally were going to do it, but the pandemic stopped. So this is the first go around for the corporate challenge, not the corporate challenge, the corporate training event.
I'm happy to say that we were able to get it in last year after a year delay, and last year was an incredible. I mean, just thinking back on it, I'm just so grateful for everybody. And for a first year event, there's a lot of people that are, anxiously awaiting, the outcome. But I'm proud to say that the team, from Sig Sauer to the Light Foundation employees, everybody that was involved with that, did a phenomenal job, and therefore it was a huge success. We're looking forward to it again this year. It's going to be another great corporate training day.
So we're talking here, we're recording on August 24th. Are there still spots open? And if people go to Matt Light 72, they can get the information there?
They can, yeah. On mattlight72.com, there's a pop-up that comes up, and there's information on both the corporate training day and the celebrity shootout the following day. And I believe we have currently six spots available out of the 50 for the corporate training day. And there is some availability for the shootout. It's a much larger event with about 500 people participating. But that is I won't bore you all with the details on that. It is a crazy, awesome day. I call it a carnival for adults.
Yeah. Are there any celebrities of note that you want to name drop as a compelling reason beyond yourself, obviously?
Listen,
people.
I love name dropping from the standpoint that it highlights, the guys that I played with. Look, I'm a very fortunate person in general, but I got to play with some of the greatest men that have played the game of football, and I'm very proud to have had time around them and learned from them. But what they do in their own ways to serve their communities and give up their time and sacrifice their Friday or their Saturday, or in this case, a Monday or Tuesday, is incredible. So name dropping is awesome because it speaks to, the caliber of individual they are. And, a guy like Gronk, just recently retired again, he'll be at the corporate training day, and I'm extremely thankful for him and everything that he represents. I got Dante Scarnecchia coming by for both events. He's, a legend in the coaching community and the NFL, and, just proud to have him there. My former wingman, a guy like Logan Mankins and Dan Copen, and guys that, always sacrifice their time, the Russ Hochsteins, the Joe Andrewsies. These guys are just incredible individuals. So whether it's former teammates of mine, current guys in the team like David Andrews, guys from other, sports teams, especially in the Boston area that support it, Brad Marchand and Kevin Miller, those guys, are going in big to help us with this event as well. So lot of good name dropping, but at the end of the day, it's really about being there and just being present in what it represents, because there's so many awesome things to take advantage of in both those days. So we look forward to it every year.
That's cool. Well, a couple of follow-ups on that. I think Dante Scarnecchia should be with the Patriots because it sounds like that offensive line needs some help. But I get that from news reports. So I think he should be there. And then Tom Brady did set a precedent. He left training camp. So maybe a day out from camp, maybe he's available. And I say that jokingly.
Yeah, we need to get that on his calendar. You're right.
You do need to get on his calendar. It seems like he has a lot more. He's got some more some liberties down there.
Well, he is an old man. I mean, let's come on. I mean, Gramps needs a day off every now and then.
Something tells me that Gramps can turn around another Super Bowl title in his sleep. And then there's Drew Brees, who's not in the game now, may have some free time too. And I know you played with Drew. I might sneak in a question at the very end here about those two, because it looks like they're going to share a second career together. If Tom goes through on his plans as announced earlier in the summer. And just a note on the celebrity shootout, you started that in 2004, and at least from the website, it seems you've raised $8 million for the foundation. So congratulations to you on that. And sounds like a hugely successful event. I want to go back to just a little bit to talk more about what you're doing with youth. Each year you host 18 kids from at-risk communities. And I think my research earlier in the year pointed me in the direction that maybe you had some kids from Brockton this year. 18 kids from at-risk communities for an 8-day leadership camp. But beyond the 8 days, your teams play a role with these kids' lives 365 days a year. Tell us about the camp and what you're doing with these kids. And did you have kids from Brockton this year?
We did. Yeah, we do. We have 4 incredible young men from the Brockton community, and this was their first year jumping on a plane, traveling to the middle of nowhere, like when they throw the dart and it hits the map and it literally says nowhere, that's where we're located. And so this program in particular, it's called Camp Vahoakus, and Vahoakus is a Northern Cheyenne word that means light. And so it's basically Camp Light. And
okay.
What's great about this camp is it's the first camp that we developed for the Light Foundation. It's near and dear to my heart for that reason and many others, but we've been doing this for a long time, right? This particular camp. And these young men signed that pledge to be in this camp for 4 years. It is 365. We wrap support around them in their own cities, respectively. Right. We have kids right now from the Passamaquoddy tribe up in Maine. We have young men from Brockton. We have a class that just graduated from Washington, D.C., and we have a group from Ohio. There's always 4 different, regions represented by this camp and the different classes that make it up. And it's really, again, look, we have a list of criteria. Here's the kid that we want. Here's the young man. He's in the 8th grade right now, getting ready to transition to his freshman year. He comes to our camp the summer before he kicks off high school, which we think is a critical time in a young man's development, right? And as they're growing and the decision process that they go through, right? Having been one, you were one, right?
Sure, absolutely. Yeah.
It's a good transition period. So, it's all about community service, career educational tours, being real, responsible, ethical, accountable leaders. And we introduced them to some amazing people. And the time in camp reinforces everything that the program is about. But it really is, throughout this journey of 4 years and taking the quarterly visits to visit them in their own hometowns and holding them accountable and checking in with them and providing resources and just watching that growth. And by the time they graduate, it's a very, very special time. And, the young men that have come from camp, I got a young man that graduated over a decade ago from Camp Vahoakus, and he's come back the last 3 summers, served as one of our counselors. And, just to see through his eyes how he views the camp now and the things that it's done for him and so many others, that's the real reward, right?
Yeah. Well, I was a camp counselor. I went to camp. It was an unbelievable experience. And, and I did it during high school started one before high school, but I felt like I was ready for college just to be away on my own because of that experience and having responsibility for a cabin of 15 8-year-olds at some point. And it does help build leadership. So I think I know exactly what you're saying from that perspective. Let's jump into go a little bit deeper into your background as a sportsman and a hunter, because as with this podcast, I'd like to go beyond the headlines or the controversy. And it's a revolving conversation about guns in America. But you're a sportsman, you're a hunter. I'm guessing you were raised to be a responsible owner of firearms, and there needs to be responsibility as a gun owner. What are the life skills that come with being a sportsman or a lifelong hunter? What do we need to know, particularly those who don't own guns, like myself, as I mentioned?
Sure. Yeah. Listen, and I love these kind of questions. I look, I think the only things that are controversial in this world are the things that just don't make any sense, right? And those are easy to see. Now, there's some people that stand up for things that don't make sense, and that's the uncle that you always tell your kids, like, all right, don't engage with Uncle Johnny, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
he's going to say something crazy. But overwhelmingly, I feel as though a lot of things that are viewed as controversial become very basic when people have real conversations about them. Because at the end of the day, when I'm confused or whenever I, maybe have a strong feeling towards something that I'm not real knowledgeable on, as I go out and seek that knowledge and talk to people that are knowledgeable, it becomes far less intimidating or scary or controversial, right? So, to back up a little bit, I grew up in a household where the outdoors was the only way of life, right? I mean,
Mm-hmm.
we didn't take vacations and, go to a beach or do whatever else. Our vacations were things like pre-1800 encampments, rendezvous, hunting trips up north during deer season. And we did it with, my uncles and cousins and family members, and we did it with friends of the family. And it also centered around an amazing respect for the outdoors through
Mm-hmm.
conservation efforts. My great grandfather created an area called Wayne Lakes back in Ohio, took over an area that was, kind of stripped clean. It was a gravel pit started by American Aggregates. It's actually kind of what paved this country, came from
Mm-hmm.
material right there. And he turned it into this unbelievable wildlife refuge, and with homes that are now there and lakes that took the place of big holes in the ground. And I had my grandfather was in the Outdoor Writers Association, so it's not hunting the way some people view hunting, right?
Mm-hmm.
It starts with, hey, here's a resource that we here in the United States can take advantage of in amazing ways, but only if we protect it. That's
Mm-hmm.
why Teddy Roosevelt created the national park system, right? And something that really changed the landscape of this country, kept the landscape of this country, right? That there were people who really understood the importance of the outdoors and the role that it plays in society and within individuals. And it's also a place of comfort for me. If I want to be centered and in my best form,
Mm-hmm.
I get out into nature, and it doesn't need to be hunting. It could be a hike.
Yep.
And so many people understand it from that perspective. But I always like to say that as an outdoorsman, as a hunter, I'm really just watching nature for 90% of my time in the field. And
Mm-hmm.
so the other side of it is that I come from a long line of eaters, right? People that love to take advantage of the resource that comes with an opportunity to harvest a wild animal. And that is, incredible food source that isn't modified by man, but is natural and healthy and really good for you. And
Right.
so for
Right.
all those reasons, I'm in love with the sport of the outdoors and hunting and fishing and what it represents and the lifestyle that it affords.
Mm-hmm. Do you fly fish?
I do, not enough. I mean, in the Midwest, it's not as big as if you're in the West or the Northeast or in
Mm-hmm.
other parts of the country, but I do enjoy it. I'm more of a bait caster, spinning rod. Let's
Yeah.
rip the water up as fast as we can and have some fun.
I went fly fishing once up in Pittsburgh, New Hampshire, almost by the Canadian border, and it was
Yeah,
great.
first lake.
I didn't even have a fly on because I was just learning how to cast, and getting in that river up to your waist. There was something very, very peaceful about it. I want to do it more. I don't know why I haven't done
Well,
it
listen,
more.
and that gives me an opportunity to name drop Dan Lyons, who has the Bear Tree Inn and all the Bear Tree properties up there in Pittsburgh. So if you want to fly fish,
Yeah.
go see that guy's place because it's perfect for doing that. What a great area.
Cool. All right. Well, I will look into that. So let's get to the idea. You're a highly successful athlete, and look, I wanted to point out here, and my son plays offensive line. He just went off to practice. He's got his first 2-a-days tomorrow. He's an offensive lineman himself. But you only had 14 holding penalties in your entire career. Is that right?
Oh man, if Bill Belichick heard you say that, he may blow a gasket. No, I wish I knew. I mean, that may be right. I mean,
I don't know where I got it from, but I did get it in my research.
I didn't. I mean, look, I wasn't a guy that held a lot. Not to the point where they would call it anyway, right? There's always some form of holding, but so yeah. I mean, I'd like to say that I was a fairly disciplined player. My coaches may disagree with that in some areas, but overall, look, I don't hold the fortunes of the team in my hands like a running back or a wide receiver or quarterback, right? These guys that touch the ball all the time. But the reality is, in sports, anything that you do that takes away from the gains of your team is really, really bad, right? I mean, it's not something that you want to be known for. And so, I think when you make it to the league, you have to realize how big every moment is. And I worked hard, like everyone else, to make sure that, I represented, myself and the organization and didn't detract from what other guys worked really hard for, including myself, right? I mean, it's not like not every call is the right call, but in most cases they probably are, especially when it comes to holding. The one that got me probably more in trouble were the false starts, right?
Oh yeah.
You jump and nobody likes that.
Well, you're out on the edge there, and I can't remember who the guy would be. You would go against at that time. What's the guy who works on GMA now? Good Morning America. Strahan. Is it Strahan? Michael Strahan?
Sure, yeah,
right.
Yeah, you got the Strahans of the world. You got the OCU Manures. You got the Dwight Freeneys and the Mathises. I mean, all these guys that were really good. They're running forward. You're going backwards, and when you can't hear, jumping can be easy to do, but you try not to.
Sure. Well, look, I mean, you played left tackle. You protected Tom Brady's backside, and if you don't keep him upright, he's not the quarterback he is, and maybe they don't win all those Super Bowl titles. So you can undervalue. You can be humble and say, I didn't touch the ball every time, but I think we know the significance of it. And it sounds like a Hall of Fame career to me at left tackle, and I can't tell you how many left tackles are in the Hall of Fame. Obviously, not as many as quarterbacks, but we'll push beyond that. So you're an athlete, you're a former athlete, you have a platform, you're doing good things. You're talking about leadership, you're talking about sportsmanship. Do you feel it's part of your role, or is it part of what you want to do to educate people about the importance of hunting and then the responsibilities that come with being a hunter, whether it's the proper way to use a firearm or to treat an animal? Did you view that as at core to what you're trying to do?
I think I look for opportunities to, share things that I've learned. Because number one, I don't have a whole lot of original thoughts, right? Somebody else has been there, done it, probably done it better than I'll ever be able to do it, right? In many ways. But I think that, we are a shared collective of awesomeness, and there's things that we can learn every day from the people that we're around. And I want to be a part of that transfer of knowledge, regardless of what it is or who I'm working with. And so, I think I also come from a bunch of educators, right? My mom taught music for 35 years in the public school system. My father's taught at universities, and he is a wealth of knowledge in about every area that I can think of: music, writing, manufacturing. I mean, you name it. And he's always working with people to share that knowledge. So I think I get it honestly. And I think that, I thrive in it because it reminds me of the little things. When I'm working with kids and and it's not just kids, right? In the process of working with young people through the outdoors, and through the work that we do at the Light Foundation, timber framing camps and leadership camps and things of that nature, right? I'm also getting to interact with some people that are the best at what they do, right, in their respective fields. And so it's a little bit selfish, in some ways, because I get to have that refresher course, or I get to remind myself, it's like going to church. You may hear the same story over and over again, but the 50th time you've heard it, you really needed to hear it again, right? So there's lessons in life that come with those things. And through the outdoors, again, something that seemingly could be a topic of conversation that could lead to, maybe some people that don't really understand it, or it's intimidating, it's whatever. Typically, by the end of the conversation, it makes a lot of sense to people. If you hear the kids that have come through our camps that have never hunted, had never shot a gun, and they talk about the things that they learned, and it is an awesome responsibility, but it's one that you can't make mistakes on. And so it's good for young people to realize that and work through it and earn that right to go out and do the things like hunting, because it does teach some incredible lessons.
And not to pick one community, but if you're bringing kids from urban settings who maybe their only perspective as it relates to firearms is in the neighborhood in a bad situation, they come to your camp, they learn about being a sportsman, they learn about hunting. Are there common themes that you hear from these kids, or are there common, and I don't know how to phrase this, do you see a metamorphosis in thinking of these kids before and after they come to your camp?
Yeah, not all the time, but there's definitely been many situations that would fall into that category. And I would first say that, look, everything we do, the mindset that we try to instill is that you don't have to like everything we do, but we do want you to try at least once everything. It's like, when you're sitting at the table and your kid's like, oh, I don't want to eat that. It's like, well, you don't even know what it tastes like. Oh, I don't like the way it looks. Like, well, that's not the point. You got to try everything, right? Sure. You got to taste it once. And then if you don't like it, okay, I'll think about letting you off the hook, right? Now with these kids we work with, especially with things that can be intimidating, right? We're playing paintball at times. And I've had many kids that have said that playing paintball is something that really broke me out of my shell. I never thought I could ever do that. And when I did that, I not only had fun, but I got over my fear of getting hit by a paintball, right? And something that simple can change a kid's trajectory. I mean, it sounds a little bit ludicrous for those of us that, would jump at any opportunity to go play paintball and don't think twice about it. But there's a lot of kids that's an impactful moment. And so when it comes to firearms, hey, look, if it's really intimidating for you, okay, let's just have you watch. Right. But I would love for you to give it a try. And we start out with a 22. It's like shooting a pellet gun. Right. And then we'll work our way up and we'll do other things. And, and typically we see kids. I mean, I say this to adults, the smell of gunpowder and something that goes boom. And then if you're shooting skeet or you're hitting a target, something, explodes, or you hear the ring of steel. It's just awesome. It's hard not. It's like trying to frown when you're on a jet ski. That's not possible. You have a smile on your face, right?
Right.
That's part of the understanding and the journey that we see kids go through. Because to your point, in some situations, a gun only means one thing. It means, death, or it means the loss of a loved one or a friend or someone else. And that's the unfortunate side to what people do to other people, and it is evil. But just because somebody turns something evil doesn't mean everything about that's evil, Right. And that's the mindset that I think that we need to have a conversation about, which is much harder than just villainizing someone. Anybody can villainize something or someone, but the reality is much, much, much different. Because look, I would much rather have someone who, if a firearm was laying on the ground and there's I use this example quite a bit, and there's a baby going towards it, which happens, unfortunately. People don't take care of their firearms, and young people that don't have a clue are in close proximity to that. I would rather have somebody that isn't fearing that firearm, but has knowledge and can go safely put that away. Now, what's the odds that's going to happen? Probably slim to none, probably never for most people. But if it did, I would rather use knowledge and a respect for anything like that than to treat it with fear and the possibility that, that could become something very dangerous, right, in a situation like that. So, that's my viewpoints on it. It's not for everyone. Of course, it's not for everyone. Not everyone loves golf, but there's nothing wrong with trying something new and getting a deeper understanding of it. And then I always encourage people, go out and meet some of these folks. Go to a local gun range and talk to these people and share your fears or your thought process on it, and make an attempt to better understand it through their eyes. And I think you'll learn a lot. Yeah,
that is one of the reasons why I have that firearm identification card application. I don't, and I did take a class, and it was an interesting class. It was an interesting guy, for sure. But one of the things he said was he wouldn't, he teaches people how to use guns. He obviously does these classes, but he said he won't take on a student who hasn't already gotten through the certification. Like, he won't teach someone to shoot who doesn't have the license, or I'm assuming you have to have the license, but it has taken the class you have to get, because he wants to know that that person has put in the effort and has some understanding about it before he takes them on. Because people come from, all shapes and sizes. So I give that up to him. Let's go. We'll close this out here with a couple of last questions. I asked you about the holding penalties. As a sportsman, and then I have one Brady Breeze classman. As a sportsman, as a lifelong hunter, then you mentioned you've been hunting from the very, very beginning. Do you have a take on the legislation that has been passed, or just the general debate about guns in America? Anything you last wanted to share on that, or particularly about that legislation that was passed?
Well, listen, there's always legislation being passed. It's either at the state level or at the federal level, right? And there's things that occur, and then somebody else gets in, and then it gets taken away, right? Or it doesn't get renewed, or whatever it is, right? And some of it's in good faith. Most of it at this point is pure politics, right?
Right. Yeah, I agree.
And that's unfortunate, but that will always be the case. I mean, what is the saying? And I'm not a Shakespearean kind of guy, right? Or I'm not a learned man when it comes to quoting some of these old sayings from the past, but to human, it is human to err, or something like that. Like, we're human, flawed.
Yeah.
Right. We are flawed people. We're flawed individuals. And therefore you're going to have things like this. But, I think the politics aside, right, there is no difference. Right. And I hope people can look this up for themselves. And again, drinking a Kool-Aid needs to stop in this country. Real knowledge, the seek and the quest for that, should be where we all are, because it's so ridiculously simple to find the truth these days, right? I mean, it's amazing how much resource there is out there. And by the way, this debate goes back hundreds, if not thousands of years when it comes to weapons of any kind, right? But the truth is this: in the wrong hands, really bad things happen. So we got to hold people accountable. Mental health in this country has been, there's been zero funding for it. Number one, they've done that intentionally, and you can see it. They had a chance to fund mental health. They chose not to. Time and time again. Look in your own backyards. Look into your own communities and see where the money's going to help with mental health, and it's non-existent.
Right.
So it's no wonder. And by the way, we don't hold anyone accountable anymore. The DAs, right? The judges, the system has failed everyone in this country, and especially talk to the people that have loved ones that have been victimized by violence, and they'll tell you the justice system is in really bad shape. So that's where I would, you know, I would love for everyone to, you know, start looking in those areas first versus blaming an object, right? And so, you know, there is no difference in how firearms operate. They're all the same, but for some reason, ARs are getting all the attention. That's a simple one for people to figure out for themselves, right? There hasn't been a major advancement in the action, right? The engineering behind which a firearm is operated. And so when you're saying AR, you're speaking to basically every weapon out there. Whether it holds 10 or 20 or 30 isn't the case, right? That's not the conversation. You know, weapons of mass destruction, people want to equate that to a firearm that is out there for general consumption. People don't get an opportunity to just go out and buy weapons of mass destruction, right? That's not something that can happen in this country, never has been, right? So, you know, again, I always say knowledge is power. Go out there, really research it for yourself, and put yourself in a position where you can actually learn from people that actually use these things, and you'll get a much better perspective. I'm not saying that you're going to agree with everything, because that doesn't happen either. And it's okay to feel as though, you know, hey, firearms aren't for me. That's a personal decision. But for so many of us, you know, when I think of a firearm, I think of the times with my family and my friends and the different hunts that we've been on and target shooting. And it's a sport, right? I mean, you know, it's like anything else. I get to compete at it. I have so much fun. You know, I have such a respect for, you know, the heritage and the history that gets passed down by guns that have been in my family, and the men that have used them and the women that have used them. And so that's where my heart is as I think about these things. And while that's very foreign for many, I respect, you know, that part of the conversation, that it's not for everyone. I also just say, you know, you got to learn how to respect the other side of the equation too. And that's where we can have great conversation, if we can do that.
Yep. Well, I mean, that's why I do this podcast, is I want to have those conversations. It's particularly about issues that I don't necessarily have first person experience or understand. And if you've listened to my podcast, for those who have listened, I've talked about transgender athletes. I just don't I don't know enough about it. So I wanted to have a conversation about it, so I get a better frame of reference. And the same with you. Last question, and it is sort of football related question. You played with Brady, you played with Breeze. They're both, you know, our broadcasters or would be broadcasters. Who's going to be the better broadcaster, Brady or Breeze?
Well, I mean, Breeze has got the jump on him, right? You know, so Brady's going to have some ground to make up. And, you know, I think Breeze is maybe more suited for it. You know, he represents himself in a way that's more in line with people that I know, that are in the broadcasting booth or that have been, you know, in that industry for quite some time. So I could see Breeze, you know, maybe winning that one, right? I mean, let's give Tommy the rings, okay? So he's got more rings, you know, but they both share just a ridiculous number of records. They both represented, you know, themselves, their families, the National Football League with the utmost, you know, dignity and respect, and just the way that they've carried themselves, the impact they've had on the game. It's not even really measurable. I mean, and for so many people that they've influenced, right? You know, there's so many young athletes that are growing up in their shadows, and that's so cool. And so I've got a great deal of respect for both of them. I mean, you can be the worst left tackle in the history of football, but as long as your only two quarterbacks leaving high school were Breeze and Brady, you're gonna probably do okay, right? So
well, you had a hand in that. I mean, don't discount your role. I mean, if we want to put you in the Hall of Fame, you were the man that kept him standing.
Well, I definitely shined a few of Brady's Uggs, and you know, what was a recipient of a lot of Breeze passes back in the day in terms of the winning side. But man, I loved every minute of it. Those two, and I gotta say, you know, Breeze, you know, being right here and getting a front row seat for Brady, you know, I had to watch Breeze from afar, and you know, that's a guy that never changed. You know, you see the impact that certain things happen, you know, or certain things that happen to certain individuals and players and people of fame. But there's a very few that didn't change their core value system. He's one of them, and I got to tell you, and Tommy, look, I'm not discounting Tommy by any stretch, but see, I had the front row seat for Tommy, during the heyday of the really lengthy portion, of his playing career, right? I got to watch Breeze from afar and see the amazing work that he did and the amazing work that he does off the field, which I have a ton of respect for. I don't remember plays, necessarily. I remember some of the fights and some of the crazy moments and, of course, some of the championships, but I don't forget a second of what happens in the real world, working with kids and making an impact and being a part of that team. And I know Breeze is the same way. And through his foundation, we partnered on things, and we had kids from New Orleans that graduated from our Camp Vahokus. And man, I've just been very thankful for, the relationships like that with dynamic people like them and the way that they live their lives.
Mm-hmm. Well, look, it was exciting to learn about all that you're doing with youth, with corporate leaders across the board in your post-playing career. So thank you for spending time with us today, Matt. I really do appreciate it. And again, for more information on the corporate training, the celebrity shootout, or all that Matt does, go to mattlight72.com. Matt, thanks again for your time.
Skip, thank you. It was a pleasure. Thank you.
Okay, I appreciate it. All right. And before we turn off here, a very quick mention of Suffolk University. At Suffolk University Sawyer Business School, you're steps away from life-changing internships, career connections, and Fortune 500 companies. Our classroom experiences are enhanced by our location. Being in the center of downtown Boston means you'll be right in the middle of the city's financial center and the center of innovation. Sawyer Business School offers undergraduate and graduate business programs. Choose from full-time, part-time, online, Saturday, and summer courses. Enjoy small classes taught by professors who bring their expertise and experience to the classroom from right here in Boston, across the country, and around the world. Endless program and degree options are all here waiting for you. Take the next step today. Visit suffolk.edu. Well, that's it for the summer. That's our final episode of the summer here at the Amplification Avenue podcast. The next episode will come after the start of the fall semester, so it might be a little bit of a break here. My hope is that we will have some very big news to announce when I next return regarding all that's going on at Suffolk University. So stay tuned for that. A thank you to you, our listeners, for taking in another episode of the Sawyer Business School Amplification Avenue podcast presented by Suffolk University. Please look for future episodes on your favorite podcast app and be sure to subscribe, rate, and share. As always, I look forward to talking to you and with you again in the near future.